how do you build your business for the 21st century and beyond, right? Can the finance org scale with the company as you grow? If you're not growing, if you're preparing for a really tough 2023, how are we going to control those finances? So all the same, if you're growing, if you're contracting, Teampay can help you either way.
Welcome to Business Ninjas, brought to you by WriteForMe, where you'll hear from business leaders who are out there growing their business and slaying it every day. Learn from the masters. Let's get started.
Hey everybody, welcome back for another episode of Business Ninjas. I'm here today with Miles Macleod. He's the Director of Partnerships at Teampay. Miles, welcome to the show.
Thank you for having me, Kelsey. I'm glad to be here.
Yeah, excited to have you. So Miles, tell me a little bit about yourself.
Yeah, so I'm the Director of Partnerships at Teampay, but I think going back into my history, I've kind of always been entrepreneur at heart. Started a few small businesses in high school, started a fintech company in college, then I shut that down and realized that I had to get a real job. But also to gain a solid foundation and understand like the world that we operate in. So that led me to going into private equity out of college. Frankly, saw the path there and wanted to make a pivot to some place that I could have an outsized impact in my 20s. And for me, fintech was the perfect place to start. So I spent some time doing biz dev at a few fintech companies before finding Teampay. Now I've been here for just over 3 years, leading our integration and go-to-market partnerships.
Nice.
But this is a role that kind of requires you to think like an owner. So thinking outside the box and combines like the cerebral nature of, thinking about new things, but also, and more importantly, the execution side, which are both necessary to succeed in the role.
That's interesting. So sounds like kind of all of your experience led you to be at Teampay, kind of built you up for this. Tell me more about Teampay.
Yeah. Well, Teampay is a spend management platform that helps middle market businesses gain control and visibility on their company spending. As you might imagine, this is especially powerful in market downturns, which we may be in now. So I feel fortunate that we're such a resilient business.
Yeah. So tell me more about, what you offer.
Sure. Teampay automates and streamlines the purchasing process. So with proactive controls and real-time visibility into all types of company spend. So think of any time the company spends money besides payroll, that's what Teampay manages. And we automatically enforce company policy with upfront approvals, issues secure payment methods with built-in controls, and automates reconciliation into the customer's accounting system. And we've built our system to meet employees where they are. Right. So we built the first fintech chatbot directly into Slack and Microsoft Teams. And that guides the employee through the buying process. So they never have to ask, what is our expense policy? Well, Teampay just answers that. Yeah. And so it truly is unique. And we have this first mover advantage on this platform.
That's really interesting. So what would you say the biggest challenge is that your customers have before they start, working with Teampay?
Yeah, I mean, I think by and large, as much as we love filling out expense reports at the end of the month, those days are long gone, right? So folks who have trouble with, controlling spend, closing the books at the end of the month, chasing down receipts, finance is no longer the enemy of the employee, right? So Teampay takes care of all of that. And this is especially true when companies are scaling, right? They just raised a big round and they're about to hire, 100 people. How does a finance org scale with the company and accommodate the needs of all the employees that really everyone is going to be spending money at some stage or another, whether it's an event, an engineer buying, something to help them, whether it's like a work from home kits or some sort of software. Everyone needs to spend money. So your entire company is the purchasing department, and Teampay puts controls around that.
That's a really good line. Finance isn't the enemy. I really like that. And it sounds like TeamPay is doing everything it can to make sure that it's not and make it more accessible. So, kind of talking about different clients that you have, are there trends in certain industries or verticals that you see TeamPay working with more? Because like you said, finance is everywhere, but like, are there trends in certain companies that work with TeamPay more?
Yeah, we're fairly industry agnostic, I'd say, but our focus is the middle market. So
Okay.
we've seen a lot of look-alike businesses come to market in the last few years
Mhm.
that serve the SMB, which quite frankly is quite saturated as it is.
Mhm.
Um, and then you have companies like Coupa serving the upper middle market and enterprise.
Mhm.
Um, but that leaves this huge white space in the middle market. And
Mhm.
so we've just chosen to focus there, double down our efforts, and we just dominate the middle market.
So kind of talking about that ideal client profile, it sounds like primarily you're focusing that middle market. Are there any other kind of characteristics or different traits that you tend to see clients working with for your customer profile?
Sure. I mean, when there are certain like sort of events, right, that prompt someone to look at maturing their finance stack. Well, I guess you'd say like, when they bring on their first finance hire is when they should start looking at a solution like this.
Mhm.
When they're looking at scaling rapidly in the next 6 months or so, when they change ERPs, like these are all sort of events that lead them
Mhm.
to being a good fit.
Mhm.
Um, but in terms of persona, these are typically, we're focused on building products around the office of the CFO.
Mhm.
And so our main buyer is like the controller, VP of finance, accounting manager, and then, on the larger end, procurement manager.
Mhm.
Um, those are sort of the core persona that we
Mhm.
see.
Talk to me a little bit more about how TeamPay can be used kind of during economic downturns. You mentioned that a little bit. Talk to me a little bit more and elaborate on that.
Sure. So I'll do a bit of compare and contrast, right? So a lot of the lookalike products that I talked about that have followed in our footsteps are really just opening up the ability to give cards under like the Oprah model, right? Like you get a card, you get a card, and like that's all well and good, right? For giving employees the ability and autonomy to spend, but all of that comes without controls,
Mhm.
and that leads the company to spend ever more.
Mhm.
Um, and so that's actually those companies' business models too. Their whole revenue model is based on people spending money because they make them
Mhm.
make from interchange.
Mhm.
And what sets us apart is that we lead with software, right? We're
Yeah.
not a card company. And so rather than putting ourselves at odds with the customer and at like asking them to spend more or incentivizing them to spend more, um, we take the stance of, we're a software company first, that we are trying to control spend and
Mhm.
have you spend less or
Mhm.
more wisely, I'd say. And that aligns us with the customer and saving money rather than spending more.
Mhm.
I'd say second, we also take a Rails agnostic approach.
Mhm.
Right? So what I mean by that is that puts us in a position of helping banks wrap controls, our software controls, around their card program.
Mhm.
So it's not us leading with our card all of the time. It's basically bring your own card and you can use TeamPay all the same.
That's great. So it sounds like those are good points for how TeamPay is able to differentiate itself from its competition.
Yeah, definitely. And we've
Yeah.
seen that firsthand, right? In the last couple of years, people have seen a lot of these free products, but yeah, I think one might ask themselves, what is the real cost of free? You're on Facebook
Mhm.
and it's a free product. What's the cost of free there?
Yeah.
I think, there's a lot of awareness now about what that actually means, but for B2B SaaS software, especially in the fintech space, it's a little bit more nuanced.
Mhm.
What is the cost of free? And I think that there's a lot wrapped up in that.
Yeah, yeah, no, I completely agree with that. So, kind of talking about being wrapped up in that, what would you say one of the biggest misconceptions about this space is?
That's a good question. I think, well, what I think when I talk to people outside of my field, it takes some framing to get to the point of that fintech does not always mean crypto.
Mm,
And in our case, it doesn't. But further, fintech is very nuanced, right? So there's consumer fintech, which gets a lot of the headlines in the news. B2B fintech, where we sit, is quite frankly this ocean of products and services that serves all sorts of needs for businesses, which makes sense when you think about the sheer volume of companies that are out there and how much money they're moving on a daily basis.
Mm-hmm.
And specifically for us, we're disrupting our space, but we're doing it in such a unique way that it does take some framing to help get there, because it's sort of like a category creation type of play rather than, just a point solution in another sort of tech stack, if you will.
Yeah, yeah, that's interesting. And I think a very important differentiation that needs to be made, because it is very different. Like you said, it is very nuanced. So knowing the difference between the two and understanding like what each are talking about, it changes the conversation. So kind of talking about being onboarded with Teampay, what does the first initial processes look like?
Yeah, I mean, the onboarding process itself, we're under a month. So, you look at like an ERP accounting system implementation, you're looking at maybe hiring a firm to implement you, because there's so many, nuance and things that need to take place in order for you to stand up the accounting system that you want. So that may actually take like 6 months. Even Coupa, right? They're like a 6 month to a year implementation. Teampay is really designed with the employee in mind, but further than that, we also take that to the finance team. So we've created a lot of like self-service type of things where you can connect your accounting system, create the rules engine really quickly to sort of codify your expense policy. So on the self-service side, there is that. And then we also do have a customer success team that does help train the finance team and, train the trainer, if you will, which, helps a lot with making sure that the activations are successful. And then, roll it out across the organization, knowing which employees can spend what and what rules to create off that. So the onboarding is quite frankly as seamless as it can be, I say.
Yeah, yeah. I'm sure it sounds like too, there is a lot of internal reflection that needs to happen in companies before they start to work with Teampay as well.
100%. Right. It's not like this. We're not like coming in and replacing a big solution that, we're not just another. It's sort of changing the way that things are done, right? Like people were formerly on using Excel spreadsheets to manage their expenses, or, like the expense report model, or, having this sort of retroactive look on spend. And now we're putting controls in place for companies. They now get to be proactive.
Yeah.
But what does that mean? And so like, that's what getting back to like the point that I talked about earlier, is like the finance team is no longer the enemy. If you are proactive, that kind of creates a sort of gatekeepy approach, right? Like, the companies can control the money, but we do so in a way that's really fluid. And, the rules can be set up so that things are auto approved. Employees can get the money they need very quickly, all without, any friction. So you do have control, but yes, it does take a sort of mindset shift, I'd say.
Yeah, yeah. So if someone listening to the podcast wanted to start, interacting with Teampay, kind of learn a little bit more about Teampay and you, where would they go about to find, more information?
Yeah, I mean, this may be really bad practice for a podcast like this, but I'll put my email out there. It's just miles@teampay.co, miles@teampay.co. You can find me on LinkedIn. Also visit our website. We've got a ton of resources for, case studies, demo videos, webinars, things like this. There's a lot of great information on there. And I think, if you're looking for a demo or something more tailored to you, I would reach out to me and I can set you up for that.
That's really helpful. And I'm sure people really benefit from that. Like you said, it does take a bit of a mindset shift. So to be able to have that conversation, before they necessarily commit, I'm sure is really helpful as well.
Absolutely. And, we've got a ton of collateral on, what that means, right? Like, how do you build your business for the 21st century and beyond, right? Because all these companies that we work with, they're built in the last 15 years or so. So they're very forward thinking. And I think, it is a good fit, right? Most of
Yeah.
the people that we talk to really just get it. Like, oh my
Yeah.
God, thank you. Like, it is actually really interesting to talk to our customers because it just clicks so
Yeah.
quickly. Yeah.
Interesting. All right, great. Well, so Miles, if you wanted to leave our listeners with one thing, either kind of like about the B2B SaaS space that you said, about fintech, about TeamPay, what would you want to leave our listeners with?
It's a great question. You know, I think I would challenge anybody listening to think about what their roadmap is for the next year and think about how they would like their organization to look and how finance can play a part of that. Can the finance org scale with the company as you grow? If you're not growing, if you're preparing for a really tough 2023, how are we going to control those finances? So all the same, if you're growing, if you're contracting, TeamPay can help you either way. And I think that's the sort of what I said before, the resilience of our business is that we are SaaS first. We care about you controlling and saving money rather than just, swiping and spending more. So that's what I would leave them with.
That's a great little tidbit to leave our listeners with, rather kind of about the company. I think that's absolutely great advice, and it's so true. Is being able to take a reflection and say, like, all right, this is where we're growing, this is where we're going, this is what we need to prepare for. So that's great. Well, Miles, I appreciate you being on Business Ninjas today. This has been a really great conversation, and I appreciate you taking the time to talk to me.
Thanks so much, Kelsey. Really appreciate it.
Yeah, great to have you.